And then I see a couple of folks in the chat also introduced themselves. So welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. And so, as we all know, right, like even though in-person is really great and the best way to serve students, virtual engagement is still a really great way and a complementary tool even to engage undocumented students. As we all know, the internet is often the first place many students look for any information around accessing college. I also was an undocumented student in my college, in my higher education journey, right? And before knowing about the different resources that exist, the internet and Google was my best friend in searching what services and what pathways were available for me as an undocumented student. The really great thing about the internet too, right, and having updated virtual platforms is it is able to deliver that accurate information and guidance to undocumented students without having them reveal their status. And with this whole recent transition to virtual or hybrid college experience that we had with the pandemic, undocumented students were having a harder time reaching support, and that's why it's key to have the updated and accurate virtual information in our websites and social media platform. And having that visible support can show a student, right, that this institution, this organization is something that can help me and can be used as a tool for recruitment and retention. I know that we have a couple of folks joining here from outside of California, but some of the things I'll be sharing are a little bit more California centered. So despite the increasing resources that we have here in California for undocumented students, financial concerns are still the biggest barriers that students are naming as the biggest challenge they have in accessing higher education. And that's mainly around the difficulties in navigating the application and requirements for things like in-state tuition and financial aid. And there's still a lot of misinformation and lack of knowledge, right, when it comes to what is accessible for undocumented students. There's this really great new report that the California Student Aid Commission actually released last week. They hosted a really great webinar for it as well, that found that in the 2021-2022 academic year, that only 14% of California's undocumented students actually got their financial aid. And this report has a lot of great things to dig through, but part of the reason for that is because undocumented students don't know that it's available for them, don't think it's available for them, don't know about the different requirements and how to navigate the process, and don't know where to find support, right? And so that's why in person is really great, but how can, if we don't know those students and don't reach those students, how can we kind of use websites and other online platforms to provide that guidance and clarify the process for undocumented folks on where to find those resources. And Rocio just threw that link in the chat too for folks who want to look a little bit more deeply into that. They also do have some best practices specifically for financial aid too, right, on how to address some of those barriers. Move this along to our next slide. And so I do think, like, despite, I know folks do like the engagement, right, the interaction with students, but sometimes just making sure that our websites could be the first step in kind of like guiding students to where they need to go and who they need to talk to when supporting undocumented students. So we have this really great guide at Immigrants Rising called Strengthening Your Campus Website for Undocumented Students that has different key elements, language, resources that you can copy and paste or hyperlink to let students know about the resources and services available for them. I know we have a couple of folks also here from campus-based organizations. So I think this is still a really relevant guide, especially if you're in California, right, on how to, on the different ways to message and share those resources like in-state tuition and financial aid and scholarships that's available to undocumented students. And we specifically focus on the admissions and records, financial aid, and undocumented student support resource web pages if you're in a campus, because those are the first places that undocumented students may look to find information when it comes to going to college. We also will be sharing the slides. I see that's a couple of questions in the chat. So if you did register for this meeting, even if you didn't make it today, you will get access to these materials. And just a quick overview of what is in the guide. We do have the language around AB 540, California DREAM Act, student data protection, because that's a concern, right? Having to give your information through a financial aid platform that undocumented students have. And so how can we kind of increase that awareness and kind of combat some of that misinformation through our website? So we have a lot of great resources that you all can also link to, and some additional services and resources that could kind of like provide that additional layer of knowledge and awareness for undocumented students. And then if you're kind of wondering, like, how do I start updating my website? The guide does include like a checklist that people can go through to kind of check off what is currently present in their website, and what's not, and kind of how can you better strengthen that, and what actually key elements are missing. That's helpful for undocumented students to know when pursuing college. And then we also know in general that there's a lot more social media engagement nowadays. I just threw in this, this chart that's actually probably a little outdated at this point. This is from 2019, that looks at what different social media students use daily. I feel like TikTok is probably a little bit more now, but I think also thinking about how do we also kind of reach students where they're at, and kind of use social media to kind of complement either our websites or other virtual platforms, or complement the services and interactions we're also giving to students in person. Just some quick examples that we do have at Immigrants Rising that addresses some of those barriers that the report talked about, right, and that we are seeing in students accessing services and financial aid in general, is just different videos that talk about student data protection for things like the California DREAM Act, videos to like kind of encourage folks to come and connect with resources and events and services we have around financial aid, and just reminders about things like the California DREAM Act to make sure people actually successfully apply, what resources are available, and to help combat misinformation, because there's still a lot of students who do think in-state tuition, DREAM Act, and DACA are all the same thing, right? And so how can we also use social media to amplify some of that, and think about, again, how does social media kind of complement our campus websites or other platforms? How can it be redirected to our websites and vice versa? Or how can it be kind of used in place of a website if that's still being built, and especially because that is easier to keep updated. And so those are just some of the examples that we have here at Immigrants Rising, but we do have a great panel of folks too, who can talk about what they're also doing on their campus to virtually engage students a little bit more. And so I'm going to ask them to turn on their cameras, or we'll go one at a time actually. So you can turn on your camera when I call on you, but we'll actually start with Rosa, who was mentioned as the director of the Dream Center University of Utah, but we'll be actually talking about her work with UC Santa Barbara. So I'll stop sharing and start spotlighting Rosa, if you're able to come on.
I'm right here. Awesome. Thank you, Madeline, for that. I really, really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for being here today. It's exciting to see a lot of folks, not only from California, but from other parts of the world. So that's very, very exciting. So as Madeline mentioned, I'm currently the director for the Dream Center at the University of Utah. However, I will not be talking about that. I would be talking a little bit about the website that we updated at the university at UC Santa Barbara. I confuse names nowadays. So at UC Santa Barbara. So let me go ahead and kind of get started with sharing screen. And actually, let me get started with putting a timer, because for those of you who might know me, know that I can talk for longer than I am supposed to. So here is the website that we updated at UCSB. So I do want to start by saying that I didn't create the entire website from scratch. There was folks before me who had already done a really beautiful website. And the first thing that sort of happened is the university the UC Santa Barbara was updating websites in general. The Division of Student Affairs was conducting an inventory of all of the websites in the division to update those websites. So at some point I knew the website was going to come to our department because we needed to completely move from one platform to another platform. So I thought, well, this is a really great opportunity for us to then revisit what exists on the website, right? To do an inventory of what is in the website. So the first thing that we did was actually we had interns in the department and I asked them to conduct an inventory of the website. So what updates needed to be made? How do we reorganize the information perhaps? Because we had a bunch of like tabs. And one of the first things that the marketing and website folks told us was that we had way too many things up in our menu thing, right? Which our menu would be this right here. I'm not a tech savvy 100%, but this is what I learned from them. So this would be our menu. So they said we had way too many things. So how do we sort of condense that, right? And then I also asked students as they were doing the inventory to then also give information on what else they wanted to see that was missing on the website and how can we strengthen students' experience based on their experience about utilizing the website and updating the website. So that was definitely sort of the first step that we sort of took, right? And then once we kind of were doing that already, then we were contacted by the marketing folks that we needed to transfer our website to the new platform. And I'm not gonna lie to you, as one person in the department at that time, I was like, oh my God, this is a lot of work, because they were like, we're gonna make this happen in 2 months. And I was like, I'm freaking out. So the reason I'm saying that is because I know most of you will probably be in a similar circumstance. If you're thinking of updating a website, it may feel really overwhelming. But you want to I would really, really highly encourage you to tap into those people, the students, into folks already on campus who can also help you develop the content for the website, or also go and find what other campuses have. That was also one of the other things that we did. We went and we looked at what other campuses have. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to start everything from scratch. I'm sure most people would be very happy to have you use some of the work that already exists in other places. You might want to ask for permission. I highly encourage that. But don't feel like you would probably have to restart everything from scratch. So looking at the website here, I'm going to highlight quickly some of the most exciting things for me. We created this resources sort of section tab. And by the way, I love this website. It's beautiful, I think. So what we decided to also do with this, if you go into one of these things, you're able to click on them and you can find more information. So the reason this right here, we also thought really strategically on how do we use like words and language so students are going to be able to understand. So in this case, for example, it says attending college or paying for college. Madeline was talking about how not every student is aware of California Dream Act, for example. In California, we really thought, well, if the students don't even know about AB 540, then how do we expect them to identify what AB 540 is going to be if we just name it AB 540, right? So anywho, here in Pay for College, we listed a little bit of like what the California Dream Act was, and there's like accordions here that people can open and learn more about these things. Also, who can they talk to in financial aid, particularly for California Dream Act purposes, and also some scholarships that we offer through the university. And we also listed other scholarships directories that students may be able to use. I also want to highlight here on the attending college, we also went and created actually admissions, institution steps in enrollment after enrollment. And admissions, we're talking about the different, particularly like what does it look like to be admitted at the UC system for freshmen and also for transfer students. An institution, that is when we actually talked about a B540 and SB 68. And then right here in steps to enrollment, which is one of my favorites. Actually, this was created by a student. They created on literally step for step for what do students need to do to be able to enroll at the university. And if you click on any of these accordions, it would actually take you to exactly the places the students need to go to. So the reason we also did this is, yes, students are going to get an email with this information, but as we all know, then they're going to have to keep track of these things, right? So we originally wanted to have like a checklist, but then we thought, how do we make this checklist available to students in the website? So students click pretty much here, they have to submit immunization. It would actually take them to where to submit those things. And that's pretty much for any of those things. And then after enrollment, we also then students created a list as well, kind of like if we were to have a checklist. Just in the website, we actually couldn't put a checklist, and we didn't want to just have a PDF as well. So we created once you already enrolled at the university, here are the 10 top things that we recommend that you do. Attend our orientation, meet with our staff, apply for our programs, which then would take them to our programs section. This right here, which highlights all of the programs, meet with an advisor, meet with an attorney, and so forth, right? So this is probably one of the most exciting ones. And I know I'm going to run out of time, so I'm quickly going to tell you the other one that I find really exciting. Under About Us, we also made a Your Team. We didn't call it our team per se, we called it Your Team. And we did highlight the people who work in the department. And we also highlighted liaisons in the department that folks can also connect with. Also faculty that are more like faculty and residents in the department, and other folks that are also part of the department. And those are more, the way that we chose the liaisons was really strategically thinking, what are the highest needs of students? Financial aid, academic advising, career related things, mental health, basic needs, and admissions, right? Those are probably the top folks that we want students to connect. We highlighted the student organization. We also added other additional campus that we thought would be helpful for students to use or to be aware of. And then this one is our task force, or this is the UCSB task force for undocumented students, but it also lists everybody who is part of it and how folks can connect with them. So I'm going to stop sharing with that because I want to definitely be mindful of my time. But one of the other things quickly that I've highlighted for you, let me see if I miss anything. Yes, so one of the other steps that we also took once we conducted the inventory, we also used Immigrants Rising, the Strengthening Your Website campus website guide to actually go back and see what are the things that we can add or that we can include. We also met with Madeline and with Nancy to figure it out, their feedback as well, then to just kind of figure out any other things that we may not be thinking about. And we also engage other people on campus. So for admissions purposes, we were not admissions experts, so we needed to make sure that the information was correct, but also engaging people from admissions to do that. So I will keep it at that. But if I have a quick advice for you, it's use the Immigrants Rising guide and involve people on campus. Don't put all the work just on yourself. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Rosa. Thank you for that really quick tour. I did throw the link to your website on the chat in case people want to dig a little bit deeper, and hopefully folks can also connect with Rosa a little bit after this. But I feel like your last point around working with other folks right on your campus, including admissions, transitioned us really nicely to our next panelist, Curtis from Fullerton College, to actually talk about like how they have worked with their admissions website on their campus to highlight the undocumented student resources, and also work with their undocumented student folks on campus, right, to strengthen that a little bit more.
Exactly. Hello, Curtis from Fullerton College. Show you our website and kind of how it came to be. So right off the bat, we went and created our website based off of our grads to be support team. One of our admissions and records directors and part of our support team here met with our grads to be support team and discussed that we needed to streamline and provide more things to our students so they can get resources. As you can see, we went ahead and added an undocumented students tab right here at the very front of our webpage. And also our step success, and also many different links to provide students resources they would need. If you go to our steps to success, as in the web guide, we went ahead and wanted to stress students that their data is protected whenever they submitted anything to the Admissions and Records Office, and then also do a step-by-step guide on exactly what to do from applying to admissions and to registering for classes. So it ends up being easier and easier transition from just applying and seeing if you want to go to Fullerton to enrolling at Fullerton. Going as the previous website, we have little menus that can go and get more information and gives more details about everything. And then also showing the support staff that we have, they can go and reach out to if they have any questions. The website being the first thing that many students see, we wanted to go ahead and give them as much information as they can, but also provide them the resources that they would need, going from just being interested in Fullerton College to enrolling in Fullerton College. as far as advice, the web guide was very important and integral in actually creating all of the entire website, which was great. And as we were creating it, we're kind of going over that checklist just to make sure that we had everything, including, is it here? The Immigrants Rising tool, which has been very helpful with the outreach and just letting students know exactly what the resources are and how to get them.
Yeah, and Curtis, I just
Yeah.
have a quick question too, right? Like, it's obviously a lot of this information too, I know, is in the Grads to Be website, the
Correct. Yes.
program at Fullerton College, but I'm wondering why you also all decided to like make it like an integral part a little bit, or like a very visible part of the admissions website.
Oh, thank you. We went ahead and wanted to engage our students and also kind of like share the wealth with streamlining the process and breaking down those barriers for students and being able to kind of exchange them from one group from Grads to Be to admissions and vice versa, and kind of handing things off. We went ahead and wanted to make it, I guess, easier for students to get the resources and information they need.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm also wondering, like, we do have folks here too who is not directly undocumented student support, right? Or vice versa, like maybe people don't have the great relationship or working to build relationship with other departments like admissions and financial aid, who need to have this information on their website. Do you have any advice at all on how folks can, or how did that relationship kind of get built for you all at Fullerton College?
Well, with the Grads to Be support team, I think that's kind of where everything initiated. We've had that pre-pandemic, and then was used that extra or leaned into using that group in order to provide these resources. Most of it came from that work group, and then kind of from that is where this website was birthed. Great,
thank you. Anything else that you'd like to show us, or any other things you'd like to add?
No, I think kind of no, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Curtis. Yeah, and so I think that point too, right, is kind of around making sure like undocumented students land in different places on our website, and it's also critical, especially because it's so hard to find, like the misinformation for undocumented folks are very common. So how do we also like make sure, even if they don't land with their dream center or don't find their dream centers and undocumented student support programs, that there's still something for them at your website to show how the different resources that exist for undocumented students at the institution. So thank you, Curtis, for showing that too. Yeah, and so I'll also, speaking of websites too, right? There's lots of folks who talked about social media, Instagram being their favorite tool of engagement. So I do want to pass it along to Patsy from CSU Dominguez Hills to talk about how they use social media to engage and maybe even build community for their undocumented students on campus.
Hi, thank you, Madeline. My name is Patsy, and I am one of the student mentors here on Tourism Success Center at Dominguez Hills. We try to stay on top of the social media apps that students are using. So right now we are working and also transitioning and start working with TikTok. But for right now, I'm gonna focus on our Instagram. So I'm gonna share my screen. So yeah, this is our Instagram, and the way that we have been using it is by advertising our events, workshops. What we like to do a lot is the live events. We like to do staff takeovers. So this is just some of our previous posts that we have been doing. This is some of the things that we do. We promote our tour treats, which is free food for our undocumented students. We have also snacks for pretty much everybody, and events, workshops. This is some of our foods that we have. And we also like to do staff takeovers, especially with our legal staff. We try to focus in putting a face to our services. And so this is one of our legal staff. And what they do is they do the live takeovers where students can feel comfortable in coming in and asking questions. Also getting them to get familiar with students and the student staff, especially because we noticed that a lot of students don't feel comfortable coming in and asking questions, specifically when it comes to legal services, right? So we want to make sure that they know our staff, they know who they're talking to, and we also like to do hashtags to reach out to our targeted audience, right? And what we also like to do is work with our other cultural centers to help us share our posts and our events that are coming up. What we also like to do is do highlights of the services that we have here. So we have the toiletries, staff takeovers, our legal services, and just about the Toro center in general. We do little tours of the center for the students that don't come to campus in person. And so what we feel that has been working out for us is the peer-to-peer interaction, right? Where, like I said, the students feel more comfortable coming in and asking questions directly to our staff. We have noticed that we do have more appointments with our legal staff after we do the takeovers. So that's been really, really helpful for us. And so yeah, if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you, Patsy, for sharing some of those things too. I'm wondering, you know, we are in a room with a lot of different educators. You're also a student. I'm wondering,
Yes.
some folks too do have like, yeah, like student interns to do this, to kind of run their social media for them. But for folks who may not, who may be like a one-person kind of team, do you have any advice for folks on how to, you know, better take advantage of their social media platforms, or to like better engage with like student interns, right? On like running your social media platforms, just anything around that.
Yes. So if there's not a lot of staff that can do the takeovers, maybe just do interactional posts in which, you know, just ask questions regarding this service or that service, right? And just checking the messages. That's something that we also try to stay on top of, just because sometimes, you know, students feel a little bit uncomfortable coming in, and or don't so that way we also reach out to those students that aren't in person, or when we don't have a lot of staff, we just have one person checking the messages and answering those questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Hope
And
that
then
answered your question.
yeah, no, I think that's a good question. Right. Yeah, because I do think those videos, right, are a little bit more labor intensive. So Instagram does have options for different polls, right, and different other interactive things on the stories to be able to engage a little bit more, even if you don't have a lot of time to create those videos. And there's a couple of questions coming for you on the chat. One is around, do you run paid social media ads? I think your camera fell down.
Yes. So what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Do you run any paid social media ads?
No, we
Okay.
don't.
Okay. And then do you encourage students to send DMs or refer them to email or call your center from your social media, from your platform?
No, we do encourage students to send us messages. We do try to stay on top of those messages and answer the questions through if we could answer the question on the messages, because sometimes it's just about scheduling an appointment with our advisor that we have here on campus. And or just like the legal services, you know, sometimes they will do kind of like go more into detail. So we do try to say, you know, just give them the link and say you can schedule an appointment here.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm also just curious, one last question from me. It's like folks have been transitioning to in-person, right? And some, like, there's been students who, maybe have never been to campus because they started college during the pandemic.
Right.
Do you see at all like any, impact with just having like an active social media platform like Instagram like this? How have you all kind of like used this to kind of help those folks who started at the pandemic to kind of transition back in person and kind of like build community with them, right, as undocumented students?
Yes. So when we do the live takeovers, we try to do a little tour of our center, share the amenities that we have here, the space that they have available for them, and the snacks as well. So I think that when we show a face, and they feel more comfortable coming in, and kind of for them to already know what to expect, and what kind of space they're coming in. And we try really, really hard to make it as welcoming as possible for everybody.
Great. Thank you, Patsy. So thank you all for all our panelists in general. I will open it up for questions before we kind of like transition, but I know we heard a lot of like people, right? Nothing I think beats in person and serving students in general. But sometimes there's a lot of like fear for undocumented student, right, to seek services or even to just make it to campus. So how can our virtual platforms kind of help address some of those fears and, show all the resources that exist, show that there's community, that there's other students or staff supporting at our different campuses, supporting undocumented students, right? And once, that kind of gets them in, how does the in-person can complement some of that too. I'll open it up for any questions before we transition, or any just comments from folks before we go into our next activity. Ruby?
Yeah, first of all, thank you to the presenters. That was very, very helpful. Question, so for events, if y'all are doing events maybe like in a hybrid manner, do you see that you have more students in person or on Zoom? Because we've tried it, and then it's kind of like sometimes it's more in person, sometimes it's more on Zoom. But I just wanted to hear from folks and see if maybe if they can share like maybe what strategies work to get more students in person.
Yeah, that's open to everybody, right?
I can chime in quickly. From the time that I've been here at Utah, I don't think we have done that, but I could be completely wrong. However, when I was at UC Santa Barbara, we did. That's pretty much like right after. It's not after COVID, but like right after when we actually started to go back to campus in person, I guess. So we did have a couple of things that were hybrid. It worked out pretty well, but we had to find really creative ways as to how to get students to actually come in person. So we had, there was one time that we brought in DocuBabe to talk about wellness, for example, and he did the presentation in like hybrid, like in Zoom, but in person we had activities for students to actually do. We also had snacks and food. So that also, I guess, like we provided additional things for people to do in person to also motivate people to come in person. But it's still a challenge, not gonna lie.
Okay, thank you, Rosa. Does any of our other panelists also want to chime in about that?
I can go ahead and add, during the Undocumented Student Week of Action this past October, we had some events that were hybrid. Specifically, we had this workshop that was Undocu 101, where we were talking about how to get a driver's license, how to go get their passport from their countries, and all that stuff that we don't necessarily discuss with some of our students. So because we thought it was very important information, we collaborated with some of the professors that work with our undocumented students, and they were able to bring their class to that workshop. So that's how we were able to get a really good turnout in person. And at the same time, we knew that not everybody could make it. So we did work with the broadcasting team here at Mount SAC to so they could broadcast this on YouTube live. And so that other students and schools could join as well to learn about this information. And afterwards, or through there, we actually had I think it was a link and a QR code if they wanted us to send them this recording as well as the slides that we showed, just to still make sure that they receive the information.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's a really good practice, Gio, about also like leveraging different connections you all have on campus to like amplify the number of people who's there. And yeah, I think YouTube Live or like YouTube webinars, right, is a similar tool to like Zoom, but doesn't require the same, you know, kind of like registering, all that kind of information. So it's also like maybe a little bit more accessible to folks too. So thank you for sharing that. Any other, yeah, like any other comments to that question that Ruby posed, or any other questions coming up for people? I think there's a question, how do you successfully get students to join Zoom calls? I think even now, is that what that one means? Oh,
Yeah.
like office hours,
Yeah, like
yeah.
from Zoom burnout, you know, it's been a few years now. And I like, for me, I host office hours for like how to find a job, because I work with seniors and they really need the information. And I know a lot of them do get a lot from our one-on-ones, but because I don't have enough time to meet with all 60 of them consistently for other programmatic needs, I try to make office hours, but none of them make it, even though they need the extra help.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anybody who has any strategies around that?
The only thing that comes to mind, I mean, I honestly have not seen office hours successful via Zoom. I think they're difficult already in person, and in Zoom it's like a lot more difficult. And I think you also brought up a good point. Seniors know they need the info, but I've also have seen the seniors don't really start to know, I guess they don't actually start to, I don't want to say panic, but that's a word that's coming into my mind right now about the info right after graduation. Before that, it's like, I need it, but I don't really need to do it right now. And it's right after that. So maybe I know you said you can't meet with everybody, but maybe still having like, instead of just like a drop-in, that they can still make a quick appointment, even if it's like a 5 or 10 minute appointment.
Yeah.
Or something that they can still schedule something with you. Because yeah, I think office hours via Zoom are very difficult to just get people to come in.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask if you all had alternatives, because basically we meet with all of our students like 4 times a year. So I already do meet with them like every 3 months, but they still need more because they're not like at senior level as they should be traditionally, because everyone's like on a different timeline now. So a lot of my seniors professionally standing are like sophomore, junior level, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of makeup work to do. And like you said, the panic is there. So they do make the one-on-one meetings, right? But that's still after only 5 to 10 outreaches from me as well. But I do have like high, like one-on-one rates. It's just everything else basically. But thank you.
Yeah, Tina, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this applies to the seniors, but what I found in the center, again, just started in January 3rd, a lot of the students are receptive to phone calls. Having that one-on-one on the phone has been great for me, and getting the students on track and having that connection one-on-one.
Yeah, Graciela, we did also try to do drop-in hours for the California Dream Act here at Immigrants Rising. They weren't as utilized as we'd want them to. But I think I'm wondering if like the Zoom things, right, are what not working. Yeah, like relying on things like phone calls, text messages. I know students don't check emails, but just those other ways to convey that information to them so that they're getting it in other spots too, right? Even if you're not like, if you're not meeting with them outside of those one-on-ones that you have. And I see a couple of folks actually have their hand up. I know that there's probably a lot of other questions and comments. I feel like maybe we can start transitioning actually to our breakout rooms, because I do think folks have different challenges, right? That they have different opportunities or strategies that they have, and addressing some of these virtual concerns. How can you think about the websites, the social media platforms, the different Zoom things that people do to kind of like address some of those challenges that people have. And so I do think that we can transition to that so folks can connect a little bit more directly and have a little bit more conversation. I'm going to put some like kind of guiding questions in the chat for you all, but I do want everybody to get the chance to kind of meet with each other a little bit more and just kind of talk about what you all are seeing on your campuses or organizations, and if there's any like learning opportunities available. And we'll report back too, so people can still get a chance to kind of share what came out for them in their breakout room. So I'm going to open that up. But any like questions about that, about the breakout room specifically before we move into it? Okay, if not, then Rocio, can I ask you to open up the breakout rooms? Are people able to join their breakout? Okay. Is there anybody who's in their room by themselves?
They all have at least two. I think they're waiting for room 7 is waiting for Jacqueline. And
Somebody asked for help. I'm gonna go into this room.
and then room 12 is waiting for Tina. Hi Tina, let me know if you're able to join the breakout room. Hi Angela. Were you able to join a breakout room? Okay, there we go.
Oh, me. Yeah, so welcome back. I hope folks got a chance to connect with each other in your breakout rooms and things like that. Yeah, anybody willing to share kind of what came up for you all? What were some, I apologize for not getting the questions on the chat. For some reason, Zoom deletes all the chat now because everything that was on the chat before is now deleted. But yeah, I hope folks at least got to talk about any challenges, opportunities, strategies, anything they heard today that is sparking something for them in their campus. Rosa, I see your hands up.
Yes, one suggestion, Margaret was in my breaking room, and one suggestion she gave us to engage the students that I'm going to start using. She says that when we do workshops and the students don't show up, they still do the workshop and they record it, and then they post it or they send it to the students. And I have not been doing that, Usually we always get at least, 2, 5. I mean, I'm lucky if I get 10 students, but, I never thought about if I start actually recording them and then also posting on on our Instagram and then or email it to them. So hopefully they will see the information, because some of the workshops are information that they needed. And then later on, they come to the center asking for the information. I said, well, we just did a workshop and you were not there. So Thank you, Margot. I really appreciate that suggestion.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Yeah, I think the like Zoom burnout's real, but also like in person, the transition has not been as smooth. So how do we still kind of like record that information for students to still access at a later time if they choose to, right? Even if the workshops are not as well attended. Rani, I see your hands up.
Yeah, one of the things that I shared with our breakout room is I did not know about YouTube webinars, and I think that's a really good resource to use. In addition to Zoom, I have had a few students express that, you know, with Zoom, we don't have the webinar capability through the DRC, so we have to use the regular version. And a lot of times our students might be concerned about their anonymity when it comes to attending those Zoom workshops. And so I think YouTube is a great alternative to that. And it's easier to access on our students' phones, you know, maybe if they're on their way home, or they can just follow the link on YouTube and watch the live webinar there. So I think that's definitely something I'm going to be taking back here with me.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Tina?
I just wanted to share in general for, again, somebody that's new in this room, in this world, it's nice to hear that I'm not the only one that doesn't have heavy traffic in the Dream Center, because I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, what can I do better? Coming from another capacity here on Delta College, reservation specialist, I had a big flow of outcome to events. So at the Dreamer Success Center, understanding the different group that we're dealing with, so sensitive. It's just reassuring that our center is right on track. We're doing what you guys are saying you guys are doing, on taking some good information back to my supervisor, just listening to you all. So I just want to say this has been very resourceful and helpful for somebody that's, you know, testing the waters here. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Yeah. I'm glad to hear, like that the challenges are pretty similar across the way, right? And I think just with the pandemic and undocumented students being a hard to reach population to begin with, sometimes it does take a while to kind of build those relationships and get that steady flow of folks to come to different events. But how can we, you know, use some of the tools that we heard about today, both from our panelists and from our, you know, from our breakout groups, hopefully to help kind of build that up a little bit more. Yeah. Any, maybe one more person to share like what came up for you all in your group? Any other strategies, opportunities that folks shared or heard about, or you want to investigate?
Just really quick, as well, the YouTube webinars are really, really good, because we also sometimes don't have like a big amount of students that attend our workshops. One thing that we also thought about working on is creating like a link tree to the specific workshops that maybe students are interested in, and so that we can also have that available and easy accessible for them as well.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Patsy, for naming that too. Yeah. And I am also getting ideas that maybe texting is another like thing for us to also like uplift more at Immigrants Rising too, right? Since it sounds like a couple of folks are trying out different texting methods to get the students information that they need. So that could be a future session actually for one of these two, or a part 2 of the virtual engagement. Yeah, well, thank you all for participating in the breakout rooms. I do hope you got to connect with people at least a little bit more. I see a couple of people are putting their LinkedIns in the chat. So if you do want to do the same and just connect further after these meetings, or if you you know, would like to connect with somebody after we wrap up, please like find a way to private message them or reach out to me to see if I can connect you. But hope that the conversation does not end here today. I'm going to answer the question in the chat about when the next roundtable is, but as we do that, I do kind of want to hear how this session went for you all. I hope you can see my screen. so I do want, as in speaking of virtual engagement, I do really like this tool called Mentimeter, where I'm going to ask people to kind of vote on the following statements. You can do that by going to menti.com and using the code that's on the screen. I think, Rocio, if you can put that on the chat for me as well, to just kind of help let me know how this went for you all, so that we can keep making these sessions better and more aligned with your needs in the future. Can I get a confirmation from someone that you can access the voting? Does it look okay? Are people able to do it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Rosa. And so with that, I do, I'll leave folks to do that as we kind of transition out. But I do want to share just our upcoming dates for our next Promising Practice Roundtable. Again, these do happen every second Thursday of each month from 9:30 to 11 a.m. Our next one for April 13th is around strengthening equitable implementation of in-state tuition. This is specific to California, right? As I mentioned, one of the barriers to accessing financial aid for undocumented students is getting AB 540. And so how do we kind of align the different ways that we implement that to most benefit students and make it as accessible as possible? You can sign up at the bit.ly that Rocio put on the chat, bit.ly/PP roundtables. The P, P, and R are capitalized. And this specific session, we do want admissions, outreach, and counseling folks to also come through. So please invite them. And then lastly, if you want to keep up with like our different events, different resources, other information, other news related to the undocumented community, I do an Undocu Digest for higher education every second Monday of the month. If you're already getting that email, great. If you're not getting it yet, please email me to be added to the listserv. And if you've requested it a couple of times but are still not getting it, please make sure to have me as your contact, because I think sometimes schools kind of like block like a outside domain. But if you're still having trouble with that, please reach out to me directly. And lastly, I know folks are putting their different information in the chat, but I do want to share the emails for our panelists today. Thank you for just sharing the different ways that you're really like helping students get the information that they need through your websites and social media platforms. And I know you're all up to really other great, amazing things on your campus. So please connect with them after this as well.